Gouache lover Justin Donaldson is widely famous for his gorgeous Zelda Breath of the Wild landscape paintings. However, gouache wasn't always his favorite medium, and he wasn't always famous. How did all of that happen? You can find more of Justin's work at justindonaldsonart.com, and you can join me and Justin this Friday at 9 a.m. LA time for a free live gouache demo. But for now, please join us as we talk about why art skills are not everything, pros and cons of oil painting, why being an artist is selfish, and the time when Justin hated gouache. Want to be part of the show? Then send in your questions or topics you'd like to see covered to our email at hello@etralab.com. If you send us an audio recording, we might include it in the episode. Hi, I'm Anya, and this is Make More Art, a podcast by Etra, meant to inspire you to keep on creating. Now let's hear from our guest. Justin.
Hey.
Take us all the way back. You are a full-time artist, right?
I am.
When did that start? And before that started, when did you realize that that was a thing that had to start?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I had this battle in me. I wanted to be a musician,
Oh.
and I wanted to be an artist, and I didn't know exactly what to do. And so after school, I took a year off, and I just played music and painted, and I wanted to find out which one would win the battle.
So after school, after high school?
After high school, yeah.
So you were like 17, 18?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I got afraid because I had heard that you can't really make a living painting. You can't really do art. And I felt a sense of duty to whatever family I would grow. And so I ended up actually doing a lot of audio engineering, so technical side of music. So I made a decision out of fear, and so I went to college for that, and that was. It was good, actually, but I ended up finding out at the end of college that I get overwhelmed a lot with sound, with loud sound, and that I really couldn't do that as a job. But luckily for me, I met a girl at that point, an American woman, and I ended up coming over to America after I finished school.
So where were you before you went to America?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was in Sydney, Australia.
I didn't know you were Australian. Okay.
Yeah, it's a soft accent, but it's there a little bit.
It is.
So
I just didn't know where exactly it was from because it's not English is not even my language. I'm not even going to assume I know where the accent is from because that I won't be that kind of person. But please do. So you're Australian, okay?
I am.
Okay.
I am. And so I came across to America, and I had about a year between when I started all of the immigration process after my wife and I got married, and when I was able to actually have a job. And at that point in time, I realized, music wasn't really going to be the thing for me. But I had a year where I wasn't allowed to work, so I may as well try and get really good at painting. I may as well try and make it work. So I started painting, watched a lot of YouTube videos, and just experimented a lot. And at that point in time, I was doing mostly oil painting.
Wow. And so you taught yourself oil painting through YouTube videos?
Yeah, that's right. And so at that point, I was just trying to think of as many ways as possible as I could to, like, how do I even make money doing this? This is, I don't want it to be about money, but I need money to survive, and I need to survive in order to keep painting, and that's really what I want to do. And so I started trying to paint a lot of portraits, oil portraits, but I wasn't in the right crowd for that. I tried some gallery work, but seeing as I was just starting out, it took me a long time to paint anything, and if I was going to sell them at a gallery, I have to sell them for pretty cheap, which means that I was making next to nothing. Um, and so it ended up taking me a long time. Uh, I worked at a coffee shop. I did sort of side jobs all over the
Yeah.
place, and um, eventually, I ended up finding a friend around near where I live who was starting a game studio,
Okay.
and so I signed on with him for a couple of years to paint the backgrounds. And at that point, I'd sort of started to develop a real love for going out and doing plein air painting, painting backgrounds, and painting a lot of landscapes, and that had become very important to me. And so, painting backgrounds was a really good transition for me. But as anyone who has been in that kind of field knows, you only do your specialized thing a little bit because you end up having to try and do everything you can possibly to make the product itself. So
Yeah.
by the end of about 2.5 years, I was writing code most of my time.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so how long until you got this job?
I think it was 3 or 4 years.
Oh my goodness. And
Yeah,
you
I
were
was.
just and you did more than oil painting? Did you do plein air oil painting or did you do
Yes.
other everything
No,
was oil?
it was basically all oil until I had kids. And
I want to
and I
touch that topic. That's going to be very interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because I had a very small house. We didn't have much money, and we had kids. And oil painting is not it's not something you can just put away really quick, and
With
it's not
kids
something you can
running
just
around the house.
not something you just pull out really quick. And so I didn't have an office, I didn't have a studio.
Yeah.
So at that point, I had to start exploring other ways that I could paint, as well as very unromantically. There's this idea that I'm an artist, so I should want to paint at all times. But the idea of dragging my oil paints out and doing plein air painting when it would take half an hour to get everything ready and go, and then be there, and then a half an hour to come back and pack up and everything, was like there's a real mental tension to actually trying to get it to happen.
Yep.
And so all of this stuff together had me searching out. I tried watercolor, I tried um, casein, I tried gouache, and at that point, I really hated gouache.
Really?
Yeah, and so okay, anyone who's listening, that's what I use all the time now.
Yeah, I know. It's like wow.
Yeah, so I really didn't like it because I'd been doing oil painting, and when you paint in oil, basically whatever value you choose to put down on the canvas is what it is. But when you're using
Mhm.
gouache, the lights get darker and the darks get lighter, and there's suddenly you have less control over everything. So it feels like you're numb and you can't do the things that you want to do when you first start out. Um, so yeah.
So, how did you go from hating the medium to absolutely loving and mastering it? I mean, the ugly stage and all the overwhelm and the pain, the frustration. How did you go
There's
through
a
that
lot of
and not lose your head?
so I put it away for a good while. I didn't touch it. I ended up going all digital. I ended up um, finding some success painting book covers for
Okay.
fantasy illustrators, and so that's what I did for a while. And then I ended up um, getting a mentorship
Okay.
with a bunch of guys at a group that doesn't exist anymore called One Fantastic Week,
Yeah.
and they ended up helping me. I mean, they were trying to get me to um, find my voice. And so I went through this process of trying to find my voice, and it wasn't until the very end when I started to bring back some of my plein air painting stuff that they were like, what on earth are you doing with all of this other stuff you're doing? Because this is what you love, and we can see it because it's just got your care and your attention in it. Um, and so I had this I'm not going to call it a midlife crisis, a mid-career crisis. I don't know. I'm too young for all of that.
A quarter
But
life crisis. We are
quarter life
entitled to those. My
oh
husband
yeah.
had one. I'm about to have one because I'm about to turn 30. So, yes.
So I had this where I realized there's so many ideas in my head about what a good artist should be, and they involved like always constantly getting better. There's this idea in concept art that just your skill is 100% the only thing you need to be working on,
Nothing else
and
matters.
nothing else matters. Absolutely nothing. And if you have the skill, then you will have the job. And so I spent so long just increasing my skill and expecting that I would have a job because I had skill when that's just not how it works. Um,
Thank you. On behalf of all artists, thank you.
yeah, Seth Godin, he's a marketer. He's a famous marketer. He says you need three things in order to sell. You need value, you need trust, and you need attention. And so the idea of working on a skill, it's only one of those things. That's value. That's creating a better product. And it's only actually a small part of creating a better product. It's got nothing to say about trust or attention. And so we're kind of really focusing on a really small part of what it means to be successful in selling anything, but successful in even just finding ourselves as an artist. Mm-hmm. And so essentially what we did is look at all of my work and realize that even in the work that I had figures in, I was doing figurative work, the background got all my attention. And so I took a risk. I took everything on my Instagram. I took basically away all of my digital work. I took away all of my figurative work, and only had these little like 1 hour, 2 hour sketches I was doing out when I was painting out plein air. Mm-hmm. And then I just focused on that, and it took a little while, but it actually didn't take that long. The minute that I had changed the way I'm presenting myself, to really presenting this thing that I love, what happened is that I already had people following me, but mm-hmm. the people who are following me suddenly were able to identify what it is that I do and what I love, and then they can turn around and talk to other people about it. Now I make sense to somebody because they can turn around and say, oh, here's this guy and this is what he does. Yep. And I want that. And so I went from when I started this mentorship, I had 400 followers, and a month after I finished the mentorship, I had about 10,000 followers.
Oh my goodness.
And it really, because it was people being able to see that I love what I'm doing, and just say, okay, yeah, I know that. It's just like subscribing to a newspaper. You don't mm-hmm. subscribe to a newspaper if you don't know what you're going to get, or and so there's this communication, and art is all about communication. The whole process of art, because it's like being a writer. You can be really good at writing, but what are you writing about?
Yes.
That changes.
Why are you doing what you're doing? I just want to say on behalf of all artists, one, thank you, I just said that, and two, what you're talking about is marketing. And what really unnerves me, that's marketing, but what really leaves me, I don't know, perplexed when I talk to artists is that the word marketing seems like this huge peanut allergy that everybody has. No one wants to get near marketing. It's a very scary word, and all we hear when someone says marketing out loud is sales. Push stuff down people's throat, and that is not marketing at all. I mean, not good marketing, at least, because Seth Godin is a famous marketer. I follow his blog and I read his books, and I'm glad that you're bringing him up. But you're talking about entrepreneurship, marketing your own work, and how to be successful. And yes, doing great work isn't everything, and it's not going to get you places if that's all you know how to do. I'm sorry, rant over. I just really had to say that. Oh, no,
you're good. That's entirely true. And you have to know yourself. I mean, so like being an artist is inherently an immensely selfish thing.
Wait,
because what we're doing, it's a selfish thing. Yeah, no, but just wait, just hear me out. What you're doing is communicating to other people, and you're trying to communicate to the heart of other people. And if you're trying to do that, you have to first look inward to your own self, because people can sniff out somebody who is just faking something, that their radar goes off like crazy the minute you start to be disingenuous. Yes. But in order to be ingenuous. I'm not sure that's the right word. Um, you have to know yourself, and so it's kind of like we get the commission to stop and look inwards in this inherently selfish way so that we can communicate something that's actually going to hit at the heart of somebody else. Um, and yeah, so it's this constantly looking inwards and finding ourselves. But then the whole job is communication. Mm-hmm. And so you can find people who are really technically very, very good at what they do, but they're not communicating anything, or they are, but it doesn't mean much to them, and so it doesn't mean much to anyone else either. You know, if you're not captivated yourself, you're not going to captivate other people. That'd be a terrible expectation, and in many ways, that's what we're trying to do. I have to selfishly follow my own sense of intrigue and captivation in order to communicate something that's intriguing and captivating to other people. And you know, so for me, that means that, okay, I'm no longer focusing on this figurative work that doesn't really mean much to me. I'm me being a person who is overwhelmed all the time. That's just me. That's my personality. That's part of who I am. Mm-hmm. I'm constantly seeking out environments in which I feel safe and secure, and in which I feel at peace. And so if you look at my work at all, that's basically the sole message of it is let me go out and do the work of finding the peace, because it's something I selfishly inherently need. And because it's something that I have to give more time and attention to than most other people in order to feel it, I'm actually also more equipped to talk about it and communicate about it with other people, visually, at least.
And then you are providing value to other people by giving them, communicating to them that peacefulness. So what you're saying is that you have to be selfish first to give, to be selfless afterwards.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You're a genius.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so there's a lot to it that doesn't really have much to do with getting my perspective right and getting my values right. Mm-hmm. But in many ways, those things, we need them. They're tools that we use, but they're always tools towards an end. And the end is whatever it is that the places we find value that we can then turn around and give value to other people.
Beautifully said. Wonderful. Thank you. I am going to be referring this episode to so many people, you have no idea. This is really good. I'm so glad we met. Question. How did you educate yourself in this? Because going back to what you were saying, you were trying things out. A friend that you met got you this job as a background painter that got you to try more background, and you loved plein air by then, which is great. And when did you make the jump between doing background and coding and God knows what else for this game studio, and then jumping to what you are right now? When did that shift happen?
Yeah, so after a couple of years, the game studio folded. It no longer existed, and I used that as a time and a space to be able to try and be my own boss and do my own thing. And so that's where I had to turn around and try to find a way to be, at that point, kind of because I was in the realm of fantasy kind of illustration stuff with the game itself, I ended up going and trying to do fantasy book covers. And so I used a bunch of freelance websites to do that. There's many good ways to do that, and there's many terrible ways to do that. But that's a whole nother conversation. And so I did that, but it was always a real big struggle to actually make ends meet, because of the market that I was in, and because the time that something like that takes. It's a long time, and people don't want to pay much for it. And so ultimately, that was the wrong product for me. But so I was doing that, and then that's when I took this mentorship, and after the mentorship, things started to go well for me in social media. And so I kind of had to split my attention. I was still doing the books, I was still doing the book covers.
Mm.
And then I was really starting to focus on trying to build my own products, build my own, and by products at that point, I really just mean paintings,
Mm-hmm.
and learn how to paint, learn how to sell a painting, learn how to sell a collection of paintings, learn how to sell prints. I tried many things and I failed many times.
Mm-hmm.
I tried going onto the convention circuit, but that didn't work out for me, and that's okay. And um, just slowly, as my social media following started to grow, I was able to make more of a stable income. So I started producing some tutorials as well, painting
Mm-hmm.
tutorials, because there's a bit of a gap in painting with gouache and poster color, and um, even just what I do when we're talking about the value that I have, um, and the value that I need painting peaceful things, painting backgrounds. I'd never considered it a job because I didn't know people could do that. I didn't know people did that for a living. And there's almost this vacuum of information and this vacuum of people saying, yeah, you can actually do that for a living. And so it's like, you know what? Once again, I needed that when I was starting out. I wonder if I can turn around and make that need into a product, into something that I can give to people. And so I started to do that, trying to be that for other people that I needed when I was younger.
Wow.
And yeah, so a lot of that, and just slowly multiple forms of income, being the tutorials, the prints, the originals, the collections, uh, and social media just building.
Yeah. Putting your
Uh,
eggs in multiple baskets
yes.
and being overwhelmed all the time because you have so many
And being
experts.
overwhelmed all the time. I do way too much all of the time.
How do you know? I mean, I understand being overwhelmed for a long time. I mean, you're a father of two kids, you have your own family, and that's a lot of time
Yeah.
and something you love. And you have your professional life, which takes a lot of time. So overwhelm comes easy to us artists, especially when we have a family. So my question is, when do you know when to stop? When to stop making more things? When overwhelm is just turning into burnout?
Oh, right. Um, I'm uh, I didn't grow up in a family of high emotional intelligence. I didn't inherit those skills. Um, so mostly I learn about the fact that I'm overwhelmed after everyone else knows that I'm overwhelmed.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, mostly I learn after the fact, and I learn, and I recognize I'm bad at recognizing it, but sometimes I just need to stop everything. Actually, when I was doing book covers and a lot of commission work all of the time, that was one of the hardest times for me with being overwhelmed, because I to make ends meet, I had to have a lot of projects, and um, they would never they would never take the time that you thought they would take, because I'd be dealing with independent people who are not art directors, and it's just difficult to have the conversation with people who don't have the vernacular to describe what it is they're wanting. So things always take 2 or 3 times as long.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'd always get myself into a position where I'm spinning my wheels. What I'm doing is not working. I'm not making progress on anything. And and the minute I recognize that, what I call spinning wheels, like
Mm-hmm.
I spend a day doing something and I'm no more done than I was when I started. The minute I do that, I recognize that I have to actually just stop everything that I'm doing and rest, and take more time than I think that I need to rest, so that I
Wow.
can come back and actually be productive. Um,
Again, be selfish so you can be selfless.
yeah, exactly. And I say that I'm still terrible at recognizing it, and I still I ping pong between taking care of myself well and then not taking care of myself at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always when I'm not taking care of myself at all that my production goes down. And then I have to take care of myself. And when I take care of myself, my production goes up. And yeah, there's a balance there that I never quite consistently make.
Do you struggle with, because so many of us artists struggle with this, I'm wondering, do you struggle with feeling guilty when you're resting and not working?
I don't think so. I don't think I feel guilty about it, but I itch. I itch to do it.
You
I,
want to get
I
things done, but you know that's not a good idea, but you want
yes,
to get things done.
I want to paint. I want to answer a question. I want to try and figure out how to do this thing that I'm curious about doing. What if the sky in the background was darker? How would that affect my painting? Like all of this kind of stuff is when I'm not painting, I'm kind of processing through it and wanting to act. But I think I'm lucky in that I don't feel guilty about that.
That's really good. Yeah, because you
Unless
know
someone,
yourself really well. You know what you need, and that really, I think that helps you processing things differently than.
yeah, unless somebody else also is waiting for me to finish what I'm doing, then I can feel
Okay.
good. But that's a different story.
Yeah. Before I change topics, I just have one more thing I want to ask you. So I love your background paintings, your Zelda background paintings. I love
Oh,
the
thank
Breath of the Wild game.
wonderful.
I took a few weeks off so I've been working at Etcher for 2 years, and I just had a baby. And on my last month of pregnancy, I couldn't do any work because of the
Oh yeah,
COVID situation and everything. So I just almost stopped working.
yeah.
And in order to, control my emotions, I just spent a lot of time playing Breath of the Wild, telling myself I have to finish this game before the baby's here, otherwise I'll never play again. And I haven't played since the kid was born. And I love the game. And I saw your paintings, and I'm like, oh my god, it was like I'm in the game again. It's so beautiful. Why? Why did you do Breath of the Wild, Prince? Why
Oh,
did you go
or
through that
yeah.
venue?
Um, I didn't really mean to at the beginning. I'm not really I don't normally do fan art or anything like that. But I was uh, I was painting. I was doing a live stream on Twitter one night, and I ended up just painting one of the Guardians, one of the character types,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody wanted it, and then somebody else wanted it, and somebody else wanted it, and so it's like okay. Uh, I ended up doing a commission for somebody else, and then somebody else saw that and wanted a commission of that, and so I was like, okay, if I'm just painting this stuff, then I may as well make a series of it because I'm already making a series of it. Um, and making series is a really good way of uh, getting attention and putting a time and a place onto a product.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put a time and a place onto a product, it becomes a thing, and its thingness helps it to sell. Um, but also, uh, I wouldn't have considered it if it wasn't also basically 100% um, in the vein of the kind of products that I and the kind of painting that I like to do anyway.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and so I decided to go for it and paint a whole series of them. And yeah, I think really because it works with my style and the mood, that kind of peaceful, exploratory kind of everything. Just it's in line with what I do, so I decided I'd do it.
And that's why it works so well. I
Yeah,
think,
that's
I believe.
it.
So, Justin, any specific artistic struggles that you faced that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was this time last year.
Mm.
It was the first time that I'd gone back to Australia for 8 years, and well, it had been 8 years since I'd been back to Australia. So we went back to Australia, and had about 5 weeks in Australia, and whatever time period it took to sort of get ready to go and the jet lag coming back, it ended up being like 2 months of not doing any work, and it was really difficult, and it was really really difficult for me, and I realized that I had been putting so much of myself and my emotion and my kind of value, I suppose, into the fact that I do work, and I found out coming out of that uh, I, because of how I felt, because of sort of emotionally where I had gotten myself to, I then couldn't do more work after that. So I was kind of like complete, you might call it art block, but I would just call it sort of emotionally cut off, emotionally blocked. And it was really difficult for me. I really hadn't heard anyone talking about sort of how to get over that kind of thing. And I ended up getting depressed, ended up just going through a whole bunch of things because of that. And that was really difficult for me. And so I ended up having to go see some people who sort of helped me to sort of coach me through that. But there's just a sense of not knowing myself enough to know that I was getting all of my sort of emotional needs met by my work, sort of identifying with my work and the fact that, you know, I'm a productive worker, and so therefore I'm a good person. And so for me, it was just learning how to actually deal with myself emotionally, being in touch with my body and sort of physically what happens when I'm emotional, and allowing myself to feel those things and release those things. I know some people are inherently good at it, and I know a lot of artists who are just terrible at it.
So, would you say that your sense of worth was somehow related to how much work you could produce?
Yeah, for sure. And not feeling like I was really sort of, you know, worth much if I wasn't, or, you know, I hadn't put much time into doing work this week, and so am I even a good human being?
Whoa.
Yeah, so really pretty intense stuff. And
Any tips on how you got past that? Because I'm sure you're not alone.
yeah, I know for sure that I'm not alone. And I also know that it goes far beyond art and artistic community.
Yeah.
But it was really what I learned during that time was that my emotions were just a part of my body, and something that I had to let happen and not resist them as they come.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd never heard anyone talk about that. So I like to share that when I can, because that's, you know, I know a lot of people who also didn't grow up in families with a great deal of emotional communication,
Mm-hmm.
who kind of need to hear that, need to learn how to sort of explore that, especially as artists who, you know, inherently we're a lot more reactive to things, a lot more, you know, it's part of our creativity is being reactive and having a high emotional content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Embrace the darkness.
Yeah, just let it exist. Let it exist. The more that you fight it, the longer it stays. What did you think of the interview? Anything in particular that you enjoyed? Please let us know in the comment section of the post associated with this episode at etchrlab.com/Donaldson. That's etchrlab.com/DONALDSON. And I'll see you on September 11th for the free live demo. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at etchrlab.com/demos to stay in the loop. Like the podcast? Help us support the show by subscribing and giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts at etchrlab.com/go/Apple. See you in the next episode, and until then, let's make more art.